Hey everybody, and welcome back to episode 4 of Gratefully Inconvenienced. I was out for the count for a little bit. I just was not feeling well at all last week, and so that really set me back in my consistency when it comes to posting videos. So I am back. Thankfully, I'm feeling better and I am regaining my flow, and I am staying true to this commitment I made to myself to be consistent in this and incorporate it into my daily routine. So I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be sharing in this message with you guys today. This episode is going to be centered around saying no, the power of setting boundaries and embracing selfishness. So that is going to be what we focus on for this episode. So let's go ahead and get into it. If I'm being honest right off the bat, saying no feels like it doesn't get any easier to do. Although obviously that's not true, but it's just one of those things that I never, and maybe this will come with time. Maybe I'm still early in my journey of setting boundaries and just embracing limits, but it's still something that I very much struggle with being consistent in. Now, granted, I have come a very long way. I think that this can be an issue for anybody, but I feel like women in particular struggle with this the most, only because naturally as women, we are nurturing and we have nurturing and maternal spirits. So that alone thrives off of feeling and emotion and empathy. And we all know when you have to say no to someone, all of those feelings and emotions, they are strongly influencing that situation. So I would say this is definitely something that us as women struggle with often. And again, all of these episodes are a direct reflection of my own personal journey. So I only felt to go ahead and dedicate an episode to the power of saying no. So upon discovering this being something that I need to start prioritizing more, I just realized that I was way too accessible to people. I was making myself available all of the time to the point where I was not able to be fully available for myself, show up for myself when I needed it. And the form of that being setting boundaries, saying no, canceling plans. You know what I mean? I'm sure you've noticed that a lot of that difficulty and that internal struggle, that internal battle that you have with yourself when you decide to say no to someone, it's always someone in our close circle, a family member, a close friend, someone at work. These are all sensitive environments where we feel we put some sort of value into. You know what I mean? Losing anyone or anything out of those three different areas of your life can feel detrimental. Losing a close friend could feel detrimental, same as losing a family member or losing a job or a connection with a coworker, someone you have to go and see every single day. So we put value into these relationships, and the pressure comes when we start implementing things that might threaten that particular relationship. We don't ever have these issues or this internal battle when it involves someone that we just met, a stranger or someone on the street who is trying to get our attention and we don't want to engage them. We've never really had the same issue saying no in those situations because they're not connected to us. Nothing about that is deeply rooted in us, and so it's easier to shrug it off because it's not a big deal. However, all these other times feel like more of a big deal because of just the timeline, the relation, the possibility for unwanted response. A lot of people don't like confrontation, and just because there are people out there that may be better at handling confrontation than others does not mean that they seek it out. I am that person. I don't know, people around me may consider that I handle confrontation better than the average person, but I don't seek it because it's an interrupter, it's a disruptor, it disrupts my peace. I think it's safe to say that nobody enjoys or looks forward to being put in confrontational situations, especially ones that may end up surfacing an uncomfortable conversation. There are so many factors that naturally we take into consideration when it's time to set a boundary, unfortunately. And it truly sucks. But my confirmation in knowing that this was something that was necessary for my life, for my sanity, was realizing that every time I did decide to say no to someone or set a boundary, I never regretted it. After saying no, after canceling a plan, I never had the urge to take it back. That's never happened. And so I think that was confirmation enough to realize that this is something that I need to be intentional about doing and prioritizing more often. The umbrella over this series is rooted in reaching a place where you are at peace and you are happy and you are grounded spiritually. I think that is the overarching purpose of the message in each one of the videos that I post. We want to reach long-term tranquility in our lives, and setting boundaries is just another step, another practice that will get us there, that will give us a piece of that. There are places in our lives where if we just make these small adjustments, then we can get those pieces back of ourselves, and we don't always feel like we are overextending ourselves into other people or into other situations that don't deserve your time and your energy. So upon trying to understand the importance of saying no, I realized how much it empowers our personal choice and our autonomy. We were blessed with free will, and that free will is having personal choice. And being gifted with that, we should never feel limited to only serving the purpose of someone else's trivial satisfaction. Inconveniencing yourself for someone else's temporary gain, it's just not a worthy sacrifice. Saying no has to be one of the most influential forms of self-care. It shows that you care about yourself. It shows that you care about the people around you. Honesty is a form of respect. Me being honest with you means that I respect you and I care about you. I see value in you. And saying no is an expression of that, because the opposite would be a dishonest yes. So me not being genuine but only saying yes for your satisfaction is, I'm not being a good person to you. I'm not being a good friend to you. I'm not showing respect for who you are. And giving someone a truthful no just reiterates that honesty and the value of being transparent and being truthful. That word no could be the last word before a complete crash out. And so we have to think about that. We have to think about, what if we only had 20 yeses left to give forever? You would be forced to really utilize the word no and also potentially reconsider some relationships, as we will eventually get into. But ultimately, when it comes to the importance of saying no, it goes back to the importance of who you are and your emotional dignity. Is because, again, these are things that we feel, these are burdens that we carry. And so always remembering the value in your personal choice and your personal satisfaction before anyone else on this planet is why that word and those boundaries are so important. Revisiting what we said a little earlier about how we have this internal battle before setting that boundary, because we're thinking about the after effect and what could potentially come from that as a result of us saying no. I think it's safe to say that being able to do that is a strength. And it's safe to recognize it as a strength because it's something that a lot of people are afraid to do. They're not brave enough to do it. They can't bring themselves to care about themselves enough to set a boundary with someone or a situation. So typically, when you think of the word selfish, you automatically associate it with this negative connotation, which, yes, if we think about where it's commonly used and in what context, it's typically not used in the best way. It doesn't describe someone in a positive light. It describes a person that only cares about themselves and doesn't care about the people around them. But have we ever considered the possibility that selfishness isn't black and white in that manner? Is it possible to be selfish but also care about people around you? Is that allowed to coexist? I think so. I think it's safe to say that you can have a love larger for yourself than someone else around you. And I think that will help us to start viewing the word selfish in a more positive light, in a way that celebrates the strength that a lot of people can't say that they have. It's good. It's praised when you are selfish about things that aren't directly connected to your ego or your pride or other things that would outwardly disregard people's feelings. I think there is a way to be selfish where you don't have to do that as a result. Nobody has to be hurt, because when it comes to your personal time, your well-being, like we said before, your emotional dignity, those are all things that are worth being selfish about. And I think that is something that really brings you full circle as a person, and it adds value to you as a person, being able to be honest and remain honest, and just to never have a hidden agenda of misleading anyone or anything. I think being able to possess a healthy level of selfishness for yourself is absolutely necessary when it comes to finding that strength to say no and set those boundaries. Let's unpack setting boundaries. That has got to be the key to any healthy relationship. Being able to do that, being able to communicate that to another person, and for them to receive that in the right way. And when we talk about selfishness, I think the act of setting a boundary is, once again, it's a form of that. You are protecting a part of yourself when you do that. It's constructive. And honestly, when it comes to saying no, that is probably one of the most difficult no's that I find myself not feeling motivated to do. And when it comes to setting a boundary, it can be anywhere from limiting someone's access to you or fully restricting them of access to you, just cutting them off completely. Sometimes that can be done in a way of just like, I'm done with you, you disrespected me, or there's a reason why I decided to abruptly cut you off from my life. And I think, once again, that's one of those things where a lot of the times cutting someone off involves a negative situation. But sometimes you could make that decision to remove someone from your life simply because of just a mutual need. You being able to understand that you don't have any ill will towards this person, you still care about this person, you still hold space for this person. It's just a reality of you understanding that this may be the best decision for me as well as the both of us ultimately, without the other person understanding that right away. But ultimately, that's how I would view it. So once again, when it comes to saying no and setting these boundaries, it always involves someone that is close to you, which just makes it a lot more difficult to do. But ultimately, boundaries prevent us from getting sucked into this self-developed entitlement that people grow to have. I don't know, that people acquire from somewhere. I don't know where that comes from, where they feel entitled to you or your time or your space or your energy to a certain degree, maybe past a certain degree that you're comfortable with. And so you setting a boundary with that person doesn't mean that you don't want them around, you don't want them to have access to you. It just means that this is what I need for that access to look like. It doesn't mean that there is no access. It just means this is what having access to me from this point on is going to look like. We have to utilize this to grow in our awareness, to be able to acknowledge our intuition, acknowledge these gifts that we have, to know when someone is doing or saying things that disrupt your spirit. Make sure that you are grounded enough to be ready to recognize these attacks on your spirit from other people in your life who have probably been in need of a boundary for a long time, actually. But because we haven't been showing up for ourselves, we allowed that to go on for way too long. So despite there being an uncomfortable conversation as a result of doing something like that, it totally outweighs the long-term burden of never doing it at all, never setting the boundary at all, never saying no, never putting your foot down for once and switching things up. So once again, it is always a call to action. There's always a call to action that we can start applying pressure to. And this journey of self-improvement is pretty much that every single day. I feel so grateful. I express my utmost gratitude when I think about the times I mustered up the courage to say no or set a boundary or set a limit, even with myself. I think it's important to have that ability to put limits on yourself as well. These are all decisions that I'm proud of. I don't regret any no's. No is bae, the infamous words of Miss Tony Jones, a spiritual healer and queen of affirmations. But I just encourage all of you to adopt this same practice of self-love and embrace your journey of saying no. That is my spiel for today's episode. Nothing too in-depth today. I really just wanted to relay this message because I was feeling strongly about it. I've been feeling strongly about re-empowering this ability of saying no, and just cutting that fire under me to start living through that more. And so I know that this is something that a lot of people struggle with. So I hope that this episode has put a fire under you too, and is giving you the boost to do this more often, to say no, to set boundaries, to start prioritizing yourself. And so we are all on this journey of self-improvement, and I'm so grateful and I'm so glad that I have all of you to be on this journey yourself as well. Once again, don't forget to subscribe, share this video with someone you love, like it, comment, let me know how you feel, and I will see you in our next episode. Peace and love.